The other big shout out that I want to do here is the Street Fighter 2.
The immortal John Hancock here.
TecToy with the brilliant work they did in Brazil with the Master System.
Master System 1, Master System 2, Master System 3, Compact, Master System Super Compact. Sega! Fala NTZada, how are you all doing? I'm doing fine also. And today I want to talk about one of the favorite brands that I have on video games, and that's TecToy.
E agora, algo realmente diferente. Pense bem, você já viu algo parecido?
Não, é um brinquedo.
Muito mais que isso. Os livros têm as perguntas. E pense bem, as respostas.
É um computador?
É como se fosse seu primeiro computador. Ele tem 10 jogos.
Brinquedo, computador, então o quê?
É genial. Adivinha o número do meio? Gostou?
Adorei!
Então pede um.
Pense bem da TecToy, mais que um brinquedo, quase um computador.
Tchau.
So if you don't know what TecToy is, this is a big brand that represents Sega in Brazil back in the day. But before we go there, please like this video, subscribe for this channel, making sure that we are sending this video for all of your friends who wants to know more about the Brazilian video game scene. Click on the bell to make sure that you receive the new updates from this channel, and go to the search, click there, Canal NT Games Brazil, so that helps a lot our engagement. Okay, with no further ado, TecToy.
1, 2, 3 pagamentos de 99.900. Os maiores sucessos do Master em 3 de 99.900. Pixar!
Indiana Jones e a Última Cruzada, Os Flintstones, Mônica do Castelo do Dragão, Back to the Future, Lucky Dime Caper e Castle of Illusion por apenas
1, 2, 3 pagamentos de 99.900. Pixar!
Aproveite, 3 de 99.900.
I'm doing these videos in English to make sure that the audience knows more about the scene of video games in Brazil back in the day. On 80s and 90s in Brazil, we did have a lot of restrictions, and that means that all the imports was not allowed to actually get in to the country. We lost a lot of launches, we lost a lot of new releases. It was always late when we received some of the new things that was happening in the entertainment world. And that means not just for video games, but for films also and anything. Did you know that all the movies and films had a different name in Brazil because they actually had to localize even the title of those movies? Yeah, it's so crazy. We learned that very, very late that the same name was not shared by different countries. But that's another story. Let's go back to TecToy.
A ideia supersônica da TecToy.
TecToy was a company created by Daniel Dascal in 1987. He actually had a partner, Leo Chris, and they decided to found this new toys company. Crazy, right? But they had a dream. They actually planned for it. They want to have a toys company that was focused on technology. That's why TecToy. Daniel used to work in the industry, but for big companies like Sharp, and he decided to leave and actually create his own company on toys. One of the professionals that followed him at the time was Stephanie Arnaud. Ended up being a CEO when Daniel Dascal died in 1994. We go back to that later. But let's talk about why they decided to create this company. The generation of 2000 was the focus. There was this dream on the 80s, right, that the 2000 would be like this big and massive change century. Ended up not being like that, but you know that the technology actually was very fast in terms of evolution. So they were trying to cover that in a country that was not even allowed to have imports coming as regular basis. Daniel decided to study a lot the toys industry in Brazil, and he saw this gap. He saw that there was not many brands focused on the technology, so he decided to go straight to there. As I said, with his partner and also Stephanie Arnaud, they were very focused to make sure that this generation would be very well informed and very well covered by these technological toys. To start this new world, he decided to create a little computer for kids. You know, in US you had a lot of that was very interactive between books and kids computer, and that was exactly what was created. Pense bem, this one here was a mix between a computer, calculator, and there was a very good interaction with the books. Some of the books are very famous and very rare today to find due this technology being so well received at that time, and there is a lot of memories that was created through this nostalgia. So Pense Bem was the #1 technological game in Brazil, let's say that, very well famous, very well succeed, and still today is a piece of art. I do have a new one, I don't have my original one. My new one is with my mother, some pictures here that I can show you how it is, and someday I'll bring that to the channel. So how this partnership started with Sega, right? So TecToy had this dream to start to represent a brand of video games in the late of 80s, right? They saw a good, partnership between Gradiente e Atari on the second generation. So for the third generation, they decided to go further and try to get one of those big brands. They tried Nintendo, Nintendo said no, and as you know, the story on Nintendo of Brazil, it's very mixed by the clones, so that's a good example here. Even Gradiente could not get Nintendo as a partner, so they decided to start to create some clones. The biggest clone that ever known in Brazil is the Phantom system. You can see that the shape is exactly of the Atari 7800, so they use that concept in one of the big gaps in the law to start to create some of those clones. Many other brands did the same, so Nintendo was very known by those clones instead of the NES. NES actually very hard to find in Brazil back in the day. The only way to find is if somebody actually traveled to US and brought one on their own luggage. That was the only way to get and see one of them. But even the color system was different than what we had in Brazil, so you actually have to find somebody to change the color system inside of the system to make sure that you could see that in color. So a lot of problems were actually brought when you actually bring in some of those systems from US. But Nintendo was not an option, so TecToy decided to go straight to Sega.
高頻度 100% のサバイバルゲーム毎秒5発有効射程50メートル以上超高速光線銃ジリオン
To start this partnership, Sega said no or maybe in the beginning, but they allowed TecToy to sell the Xylon gun and also all the equipment. So pretty good. TecToy decided to start from there, but they saw that there was missing some connection between the gun and actually the Brazilian kid. So TecToy decided to actually buy all the rights of the anime and bring that to a big TV network that is still known, TV Global or TV Globo. And every Saturday morning, you had this manga cartoon being presented to the kids. They love it, they saw the connection, they start to buy this toy gun, and that was very successful. Sega was so impressed about that market discovered by TecToy, so they decided to move forward. Gradiente came back to Sega trying to get the rights to actually represent Sega Master System over there, but unfortunately, or fortunately for TecToy, due to the big success that they did with the Xylon, they decided to move forward with TecToy. So Sega and TecToy started to do this partnership that was very well known by everybody who actually plays video games today. I have Xylon here, so you can see a little bit of this game. TecToy in 1988 showed to the customer back in Brazil what Sega Master System would be, or the TecToy Master System would be. There's a big trade event over there called a Brink, and on that fair specifically, all the brands were showing what's the new toy that is upcoming for the next year. Sega Master System, or the TecToy Master System, was presented over there and was very well received. So everybody was actually looking for that as soon as possible. The design, the equipment that goes with it, the light gun, the controllers, everything was so appealing that everybody was very curious to see what the Sega Master System would be in 1989. And that happened. In September of 1989, TecToy Master System was launched.
Estamos sendo atacados. Usem as pistolas Light Phaser, os óculos 3D e boa sorte.
O Master System da TecToy é o maior desafio que você já enfrentou. Master System é um jogo, mas poderia ser verdade.
TecToy did a massive marketing strategy on top of Master Systems. They did a lot of different things to make sure that the customer would go to there. Sega or TecToy Master System was more expensive than any other clones. It was very important to have a good advertisement behind of it so they can actually captivate more of this customer, even if the price being a little higher. They did a lot of ads on newspapers, video game magazines, TV campaigns or TV commercials all over the place. They actually have one or two big TV shows talking about TecToy and Master System, and that was hosted by Gugu Liberato and Miguel Falabella, big TV hosters in Brazil.
Agora é hora de videogame show da TecToy. A gente, é claro, começa com as novas dicas para você ficar craque nos jogos.
The success of TecToy was very related by the marketing. So marketing was very on it to make sure that the kids will actually choose the Master System instead of the clones. But also NES is getting bigger in US. So the 1983 crisis was not affecting much the Brazilian video game scenario at the time, as I said, because of the imports. But the NES getting bigger and bigger on the late 80s was showing to the Brazilian customers the power of the system. So TecToy decided to actually put the same service that Nintendo had in US in Brazil, and that was the hotline. So the hotline was solving for tips of the games, consoles, products, all the questions that the customers were very excited to see. It's so funny because when you bought a system, you actually got this card over here. This card is a warranty card, but also there was a letter for the parents say, hey, congratulations for you parents to actually choose TecToy, and you are developing your kid to be more smart as you are preparing them for the 2000 generation with a technological toy. So very nice way to affect not just the kids, but also the parents. I had other Brazilian YouTubers that actually was part of this whole environment, and I asked them to talk a little bit about what they feel about TecToy and how they feel about that today. So let's see what they can tell us.
The immortal John Hancock here, and what does TecToy mean to me? You know, when I hear the word TecToy, I definitely think Brazil and how much it brought Sega products to that country. And, you know, for me in the States, TecToy doesn't mean much. You know, Sega was publishing its own products here and marketing it pretty heavily. And so, you know, TecToy, when I hear about TecToy, I think of, you know, it was the way where other countries, especially Brazil, that's how they got their Sega fix. And, you know, being so huge still to this day is crazy. But yeah, you know, when I grew up, I didn't know much about TecToy. And even to this day, I don't have many TecToy games in my collection, unfortunately.
I personally associate TecToy with the brilliant work they did in Brazil with the Master System. So while Nintendo didn't have an official presence in Brazil in the NES days, meaning that the market was flooded with Famiclones and bootleg games, Sega did have an official presence in Brazil via TecToy. So the Master System was there, the games were there, officially, and that meant even more because TecToy translated games to Portuguese. They even adapted some games for the Brazilian market. So, for example, Phantasy Star, it was translated to Portuguese and ended up being the first experience of a lot of Brazilians both with an RPG and a game in their native language. Wonder Boy, for example, was adapted and became Mônica no Castelo do Dragão. TecToy also released some exclusive games like Street Fighter 2 and Virtua Fighter, that's on the Master System. They also released Duke Nukem for the Mega Drive, Riven for the Saturn, which was actually even dubbed in Portuguese. So overall, TecToy did an amazing job in Brazil. They were publishing, they were distributing Sega consoles and games, and they helped a lot to shape the passion for gaming of a lot of Brazilians.
Hi guys, I'm Rambo. My dear friend NT invited me to talk about the importance of TecToy in my life. First of all, I'm sorry for my bad English, but I'll try my best, okay? So let's talk about TecToy. Back then, in the 90s, it was almost impossible to have games made for the Brazilian kids. Most of the games was made based on the North American culture or Japanese culture. Then TecToy appears and starts to make games based on Brazilian cartoons, Brazilian comics and TV shows that were famous here in Brazil. Some of these games were even in Portuguese. As a little kid, I didn't know that these games were nothing but famous games that was modified by TecToy. All I knew at the time is that I could play some games with my favorite characters, like Turma da Mônica, and for that I will always be grateful. Thank you, TecToy, for making the Brazilian kids feel included.
What's up, NT? Lots of nostalgia when I think about TecToy. Grew up in Brazil early and mid-90s, TecToy was the high-tech toy brand. At least for us as a kid, right? Because they had so many, not only video games, but awesome toys. I remember that Master System and Mega Drive were expensive, especially the cartridges, because you couldn't buy, you could only buy original ones. It was not like the Nintendo that we had the non-original. Maybe that's why I took the Nintendo route. I never had at the time a TecToy / Sega console. Only some of my rich friends, but now I have it. So, but especially during the Master System era, I remember staring at the store window, that beautiful console. For me, it's one of the most beautiful consoles until today. Those 3D glasses, wow, that was so amazing. The light phaser, there was nothing cooler than that. But as I said, most of what I remember are the toys. They had this awesome little computer called Pense Bem that you could buy activity books to interact with this little computer. That was super fun. The mini games, the Master System series, that for most of us, that could be the closest you could get from playing Master System. I remember they released Shinobi, Outrun, Altered Beasts in this little LCD mini game. It was so fun. And like all of us always say, I miss that time. Everything was so simple and fascinating. All right, see ya.
Did you know about all the variations of the Master System? So the Master System 1, Master System 2, Master System 3, Compact, Master System Super Compact. So those are a bit of the variations that TecToy made, and they were slightly different from what you saw outside of Brazil. Check it out. few of the games actually need some highlights here, and one of them is the Fantasy Star. That was the first localized game ever created in Brazil. So they actually not just translate the whole game, but actually put the subtitles. So you could feel and play a game for the first time in Portuguese, which is totally unique for TecToy to do. I used to play video games all in English or Japanese, so that was a good advance that TecToy actually opened for the video game scene later. The other game that I want to talk to you about is the Férias Frustradas of Pica-Pau, the Woodpecker. You know very well the Woodpecker. Yeah, very famous in Brazil also. And actually, that was the first Brazilian original game. Yes, the TecToy actually talked with the Sega team saying that they want to create that. So from scratch, all the journey was created by the TecToy team back in the day. Very nice to see this game. Check it out. Some games were cancelled in Europe, but TecToy decided to launch in Brazil. Very nice ones, unfortunately was not launched overseas, but you can see here the games, check it out. main shout out that I want to do here on the games is the Street Fighter 2. Did you know that there is a port of the Street Fighter 2 for Master System? Yeah, that exists, and that was created by TecToy. Same idea of the Sonic being ported by Mega Drive or Sega Genesis to Master System, that happened on the Street Fighter 2. So at first Sega didn't want to see that on Master System, but TecToy actually brought them back to Brazil saying, hey, let's have a meeting here. So they came and they were in a meeting room and they put the Street Fighter 2 in a big TV over there. The Sega team was confused, saying, hey, why you are showing us this Sega Genesis game? And they're saying, because that's not Sega Genesis, that Master System. And then they showed that there was actually being played on Master System. They were very amazed about it, and they allow TecToy to launch. It's a very rare game today, not easy to find and very expensive, but you can see a little bit of the gameplay here. Not so nice as the Genesis for sure, just 2 buttons to you play, but very nice to see that exists, and it's a very good item for the collectors. Check it out. out. I cannot finish this video without giving a big shout out for Warp Zone that put this Bible together. Very similar to what the NES Punk created for Super Nintendo and NES in US. Warp Zone did the same for Master System, for Sega Genesis, and now they're creating one for the clone. So as soon as I have the collection here, I will do a video. But big shout out for the Warp Zone team, and also a good shout out for the Old Gamer magazine team put this guide together also. Both of these books tells a very good story about TecToy and about Sega in Brazil back in the day. So that's it, folks. I want to say thank you again for the audience. I want to do more of these TecToy videos. If you like this video and you want to see this sequel, let me know here so I can create those videos for you in English, okay? Thanks again. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, go to the little bell over there so you can see new videos upcoming as soon as it is posted on the channel, and also go to the search bar and type in Canal NT Games Brasil, so you help this channel to have more engagement. Thanks again. It's a pleasure to talk to you about those stories in Brazil back in the day, and I have much more. Stay tuned on this channel, okay? Thank you very much, and as I always say, jogue videogame.